Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. I don't like, Street Fest because there's too many people. And
that's why you don't like public transportation, because of the public?
Yeah, well, especially in Chicago because there's too many people of low character and low IQ, in particular in Chicago. But Swedish Fest, do they have, like, Swedish fish there?
Yeah. Oh, my God. This is the pandering. Yes, you can buy Swedish fish.
I love Swedish fish.
Lingonberries. There's Swedish pancakes. There's Swedish meatballs.
Swedish meatballs?
Yeah.
I could eat my body weight in Swedish meatballs and Swedish fish. I can.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like. Yeah. What else?
Swedish people, very good-looking group, I might add.
Yeah, about all tall, leggy blondes. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Great dispositions.
Any of
like
them,
the finer things in life.
Andersonville, though, are any of them straight, or they're all on the spectrum?
We do have a fourth of a block left that's Swedish, and then the rest is all lesbian.
Oh,
Quinn lives in Andersonville, I think. Yeah, he lives in Andersonville. Is Quinn
Quinn's not a Swedish lesbian, not that I'm aware of.
Or maybe he's transitioning into a Swedish lesbian. Yeah, you might have to check it out. I think you should.
I'll consider it. All right. So this is interesting development in the state of Michigan, which is a swing state again this cycle. In point of fact, again, battleground polling shows Trump up a little bit in Michigan, like the other battleground states, but it's very close. And so things like fraud prevention in regions that have had trouble conducting elections with integrity, Cook County is an example. I would say Detroit is an example, too. So fraud is a concern, or incompetence, or the combination of the two, the incompetence that opens the door to fraud. Michigan State Senator Jim Runstad is none too happy about Democrats in Michigan passing a bill that changes a 70-year-old law, and he argues prevents the Board of Canvassers from investigating election fraud. Take a listen.
In the 2020 election, we first in 2016, I believe in Detroit, it was 72% of the precincts couldn't be recounted, mostly for an overcount, for a whole series of issues. Broken open ballot boxes. So we gave them more time and money. And what happened in 2020? It went from, I believe, the 72% to 79%. How can this happen? So these very astute Board of Canvassers for Wayne County said, we want to find out what happened. What happened then? They had a tsunami of death threats. Of all the death threats that I've heard bantied around, the absolute worst I have ever heard was against that Wayne County Board of Canvassers. A female who was doxxed, her daughter was doxxed. They sent horrific things to the mother. One of them was a tortured, bloody, murdered little girl the same age as her daughter, and said, if you don't vote for this, is going to happen to your daughter. Now, of all the threats I've heard, nothing have I heard is more despicable, disgusting than that. If that had been me as a parent, I don't know what I would have done. So what did the law enforcement do? They waited 4.5 years to look at this case and investigate this case. And the most severe threat I've ever heard, verbal written threat, she was given 5 days of suspended sentence. This is what's happening in terms of real, true threats going on here. And the people who had the ability to the investigation stripped out, gone with this bill. After 70 years of this bill, the Democrats have stripped out the ability of the Board of Canvassers to investigate fraud in a recount and to get subpoena power. And now you refer it off to these hyper-partisan individuals who will never prosecute this. This is an outrage that we have had this bill passed. I don't know what to do in terms of expressing to the people here in the state of Michigan why the Democrats are doing this now. 70 years of a bill that has worked well, and the Democrats stripped the provisions out to stop fraud. I think the people here in the state of Michigan know why the Democrats have done this today. Thank you. I'd like my comments printed in the Journal.
Yeah, I think we know too. And I think this is, not yet another alarm bell for the Trump campaign, for the RNC, for the Republican Party in Michigan to redouble their efforts. I mean, we've talked about the progress Republicans have made. We've had Ken Cuccinelli on talking about the election integrity program that he's running. And there have been some improvements made in some of the swing states, most notably places like Georgia, but less so in places like Nevada and, as we're hearing, Michigan. And again, we're talking about a couple points right now, at least. So this is all material, and it can't be highlighted enough. And as we were discussing this topic earlier in the week, at some point the Trump campaign needs to raise the profile on this and start talking about what they're doing, because nothing is going to be fail-safe. But at least you can start sending the message to the ecosystem that, just so you know, we got a lot of people. They're watching. We're ready to go. We're doing preemptive litigation in a lot of these jurisdictions that don't seem to know how to run an election properly. And we're going to highlight and bring into the public domain anybody who is engaged in skullduggerous behavior, whether or not the local authorities want to prosecute them or not. I mean, at least try to have some of a chilling effect on this where you don't have even-handedness from the local officials. For more on this and other legal and political matters, Julie Kelly, her Substack, Declassified with Julie Kelly. She's also the author of the book, January 6th, How Democrats Used the Capitol Protest to Launch a War on Terror Against the Political Right. Julie, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Thanks for having me on.
So, election integrity, it continues to be a street fight, state by state.
It does, and we talked last time about some improvements in Wisconsin and some in Georgia. This is very disheartening news coming out of Michigan because, to your point, it is going to be a tight race, and it really was in 2020. But for the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, in that state, who illegally mailed out about 5 million absentee ballot requests, people who had not requested them, broke the law there and sent them out regardless. Who knows what would have happened in Michigan? And, of course, the biggest example of election interference in Michigan in 2020, the infamous Whitmer Fednapping plot. So we are going to, in addition to, and this is something that I'm trying to cover, I'll have a big piece on this shortly, not just the voting chicanery or things like they're doing in Michigan, stripping localities of their rights to oversee election integrity, but what the FBI, DHS, and other agencies are planning, similar to what they did in 2020, the Whitmer Fednapping hoax, to make it look again like Trump and his supporters are deranged right-wing domestic terrorists and he cannot be put back in office.
Well, and you still have, in addition to the Trump prosecutions, which we'll get to, you have prosecutions of, quote unquote, Trump electors in places like Arizona and, to see if they can secure convictions there. And to your point, say it's Trump, it's his supporters, it's this criminal enterprise. It's not just a convicted felon in the Oval Office. It's the crime boss in the Oval Office and all of his, capos around the country.
That's exactly right. So, and of course, this happened in Michigan as well.
Yeah,
Attorney
right.
General Dana Nessel, who prosecuted, I think, 8 or 10 senior citizens, her own constituents, for what happens every 4 years. We were told by the parliamentarian of Congress and also the archive that they receive every 4 years fake electoral certificates of people, in protesting whoever actually won the election. So this is not a crime. It's never been a crime. But, of course, Democrats are experts in turning non-crimes into crimes because they have powerful, active Democrat attorney generals and now, of course, the Department of Justice to help with that lawfare.
You're serving essentially as it's sort of like Judicial Watch was like the de facto Department of Justice during the Obama administration. You're sort of like the independent, the unnamed at-large independent prosecutor investigating Jack Smith. So,
what's the
I
latest
love
with
that.
our guy?
so give us,
Thank you, Dan.
yeah. So give us an update on your case. Yeah.
Yeah, so, well, I have some help here, and that is Judge Aileen Cannon in Southern Florida. As I noted, when she officially vacated the May 20th trial date and she set a series of hearings, what it looked like and what it is she is putting the DOJ and Jack Smith on trial. So today is the first in a series of hearings. She will consider a motion to dismiss based on the unconstitutional, unlawful appointment of special counsel Jack Smith, that his appointment by Merrick Garland was unconstitutional, that it violated the appointment clause because he was never appointed by the Senate, appointed by the president. He was never confirmed by the Senate, like all the other 95 or 96 U.S. attorneys are throughout the country, and that also his funding source was not approved by Congress. That hearing is going on in Florida today. Unfortunately, we have a wedding here in Chicago, so I can't go. But I will be there Monday and Tuesday, where she also will continue to consider this motion to dismiss. She will hear from both sides, including two organizations who filed amici briefs, and she will hear from both sides from those briefs as well. Monday, she will consider Jack Smith's gag order against the president, proposed gag order, prohibiting him from criticizing law enforcement officials involved in the unprecedented armed raid of Mar-a-Lago in August of 2022, and also evidence of the mishandling of evidence collected during that raid. And then she will consider two other motions. And Dan, you know this as an attorney, the extremely rare move by the chief judge in Washington, D.C. to pierce attorney-client privilege between Trump and his lawyer, forcing his lawyer to produce documents to the special counsel claiming that there was evidence of a crime between Trump and his attorney. And also another motion, defense motion, to suppress all the evidence from the Mar-a-Lago raid, saying that the raid itself was illegal, unlawful, and violated the terms of the warrant. So that's happening in Southern Florida. Judge Cannon, and I'm simply her scribe, Judge Cannon putting Jack Smith on trial. It's a beautiful thing to see, which is why you see the New York Times report yesterday, alleged bombshell that the chief judge in Southern Florida, George W. Bush appointee, tried to really coerce Judge Cannon into recusing and relinquishing that case and giving it to someone else. And Judge Cannon said, no, thank you.
Yeah, and under what theory would she need to recuse herself?
Well, the theory was that because Judge Cannon took the very bold step in September of 2022 of appointing what's called a special master, a third party, a retired judge, who would vet all of the evidence collected during the Mar-a-Lago raid. Now, the DOJ said they collected 13,000 pieces of evidence, but only 102 documents met the terms of the warrant, which was documents that had classified markings, government records.
Oh, you mean the pictures that they tweeted out?
The doctored photos, Amy?
Yeah.
Yes, where they put the cover sheets on top and then took a picture.
Yeah.
Yes, that's just one example of how reckless and sloppy and corrupt this raid was. And so apparently this chief judge went to Judge Cannon and said, because you were overturned on appeal, your appointment of a special master, this is bad optics, quote unquote. You should give up this case and give it to someone else. Now think about this. And if there are attorneys out there listening, I would love to get some feedback on this. You have the chief judge, who is not Aileen Cannon's boss, by the way. She's just the chief judge of that district. Mm-hmm. Going to Judge Cannon and interfering in this politically charged case, the first criminal indictment ever of a former president. And this chief judge goes to another judge trying to get her removed from the case because she had already signaled she did not trust the Department of Justice and thought that a third party should handle all the evidence.
And did Jack Smith seek her recusal?
He never has, Dan.
Well,
Isn't
that makes it really fascinating. So the prosecutor in the case hasn't sought her recusal, but the chief judge doing the prosecutor's bidding seeks her recusal. Yeah, that's problematic. Talk about bad optics, right?
Well, exactly right, Dan, and that's why I tweeted and behind the scenes said to House Judiciary Committee, the bombshell is not the New York Times story that they reported it, and this is another smear job against Judge Cannon. The scandal here is that Chief Judge and another federal judge tried to coerce Judge Cannon into dropping and stepping away from the case. That is the scandal House Republicans need to find out. Because to your point, Jack Smith had not sought a motion to recuse. Now, Trump's attorneys did this in the Washington case, asked Judge Tanya Chutkan, the Obama appointee with a long record of bias against Donald Trump, to recuse. She said no. So why hasn't Jack Smith, a year later now, asked Judge Cannon to recuse? Because, to your point, Dan, they were working probably behind the scenes with DOJ and Jack Smith and others to privately pry this case out of our hands.
Well, next week is going to be a big week, or certainly the next 9 days, because we're still waiting with bated breath for the Supreme Court's ruling on 1512 and that statute, the interrupting an official proceeding, which so many J6 defendants have been charged under, and which President Trump has been charged under, too. So that's going to be very impactful.
Correct. So in about a half hour, I will be on docket watch again at the Supreme Court. They have 18 opinions outstanding, some big ones. 1512, of course, is the one that I'm watching for. The Fisher case, 350 plus J6 defendants, very likely wrongfully accused and prosecuted by this DOJ under that post-Enron documents tampering statute. Just amazing. Also, half of Jack Smith's Washington indictment against Donald Trump. We're still waiting for the immunity ruling from the Supreme Court, which will be a landmark decision. Is a former president immune from criminal prosecution for his acts in office? Also, other big cases, the Chevron case, and then, of course, the Missouri case, the collusion between the Biden White House and big tech to silence critics of COVID lockdowns and vaccines.
Julie Kelly, Declassified with Julie Kelly is her Substack. She's also the author of the book January 6th, How Democrats Used the Capitol Protest to Launch a War on Terror Against the Political Right. Julie, thank you as always.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
You too, and she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Are you a driver of a Ford Power Stroke diesel engine? Tired of taking your Ford Power Stroke diesel